let me return to why the self. Why the self? I think this is still Saketana. Now, the self is ambiguous. Here we go. We were saying that just 2 minutes ago. It is fragmented and lacks the concrete sense of the self, as Lons is trying to deconstruct the traditional notion of criticism and thereby forming herself and her idea of criticism. So there is a self-information. The critic's self is evolving. So self-portrait as a book places us before this critic information, this evolving critic. But as you're saying, the meaning of self is ambiguous because if we connect to Dipjyoti's comment, there is a sense in which the self is placed in a collective, an expansive and expanded landscape. The self becomes fragmented. In fact, if you look at the way the book is put together, it's a sequence of raw conversations. There is almost no edge where the conversation flow into each other, but you still retain the sense of fragments because they, zigzag, move about. There is no logical thread as you would have in an argument. The only logical cohesive thread is, of course, the question about the critic, which returns. In fact, Lons' own insertions are about that. She listens to the artist and she inserts herself to reflect on what has happened to the image of the critic. We read those quotations during the lecture. So the idea of criticism mirroring the way a planet is formed. Oh, I love this metaphor. The idea of the planet, the idea of the plane. First, there is the abstract and then the concrete. Yes, yes. The self is crucial as it is through the self that Lonzi constructs her idea. Now, the meaning of self in this other part of your comment relates to Lonzi's own self-experience, self-consciousness, the desire to include the subjective element, as we were saying, in how do we in a way, let me try and find the right word, in a way, negating, denying the subjectivity of the critic is a bit of a hypocritical thing. It's inauthentic because the critic always comes to the work of art with a subjectivity. Now, the way in which this problem has been eluded in the past, think about critics like Tsvetan Todorov, think of like critics like Paul Deman, with Todorov especially, the figure of the reader, in the abstract has been invoked. So the critic is someone that remains invisible and shifts swims in and out the idea of the reader. The reader thinks that. So there has been an overshadowing, a denial of the subjectivity of the critic. And at this point in time, Lonzi realizes that, reveals that, and she's reacting to that denial. The self is crucial as it is through the self that Lonzi constructs her idea of her very own self and what ideology and tradition she stands for. Given that she's the founder of that, yes, thank you for understanding Lonzi that way. Before moving, let's, out of, to be fair, let's take now a comment from one of the groups. I see Yashika that has her or his hand up. I'm sorry. And Paridi was before Yashika. So Paridi, and then I will return to the chat. Paridi, you can unmute yourself and share your comment.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are, Paridi.
Ma'am, I was thinking about the idea of the self, which she develops in the argument, and I was thinking how the self is then in relation with the others and how community centered the whole idea becomes in her work. I
Mm,
was also thinking about the tape recorder per se, and while we all talk about technology, I was also thinking about the idea of orality which enters
mm,
rather than the written format of communication. The very idea of orality is also tied with the idea of pre-written verses or pre-print, particularly,
mhm,
or pre-manuscript, if I am,
yeah,
more
yeah, yeah,
elaborate
yes,
in
yes,
that.
yes,
And
got
the
you.
idea of community, which happens when orality becomes the center of it
Mm,
all.
mm,
I was also thinking about how this is very similar to the autobiographical voices of women, which where the self appears more in a communal form, and there the communal form appears as the authorial voice. So the idea of interconnectedness is very strong.
yeah,
Also, this turns away from the modern idea of the isolated artist or the critic. So it's very central to that as well. I think I believe Yashika will further elaborate on the point, and but she very beautifully mentioned the idea of interruptions when we were discussing how she was very interrupted in the text itself, and I think it reminded me of Susan Sontag
yeah,
in where she writes, as consciousness and hardness to flesh, that it is not natural to speak well. The
yeah,
eloquence is not natural. You
yeah,
people living in communities,
yeah,
are this idea of speaking eloquently is very individualized solitude.
yeah,
So I think how in very small moments as well she introduces the idea of community, which is the very core of feminism, and I really appreciate that about that
yeah,
text.
yeah, yeah. Paridi, thank you for your very incisive contribution. Let me highlight something: the self in relation to the other and the communal dimension. Absolutely. Now we hear that in Lonzi's experiment. The self-portrait is an experiment that comes from that desire for an encounter and that self-image as someone embedded in the midst of a community of artists. Now, orality, however, is really important here. You're right. The tape recorder, okay, can record oral conversations, and I think we have an interesting point here because it's not that we want to pit orality against writing, but we have a point when we think about the difference between the recorded conversations and written text. Recorded conversations for Lonzi, it's as if they remained before a finished written text. So it's as if they promised the idea of an unfinished book, an unfinished text. Therefore, a discourse evolving without a beginning and an end. You remember when Derrida talks about the end of the book. Now, I love the way you put it, pre-written and pre-manuscript. We have already bumped into this idea with the notebooks of Sontag, when what she dreamed in those entries where she withdraws. She wants to withdraw from dogmatism. She wants to withdraw from, the pedagogical and dogmatic tone. She wants to withdraw from a systematic, rigid thought. She wants to withdraw from all these things. The dream there, and she dreams of writing an essay that is not historical, not cultural, but really philosophical. The dream there is to remain in the pre-written, tearing in the unfinished writing. Now, I know that as people of the present, we have assimilated maybe too much. We have assimilated the deconstruction of voice and writing, logos and phoneme. We have become so used to defend writing as an authentic thing that maybe we have forgotten that it is not wrong to reflect on the difference between voice and writing. Voice is not in the absolute to be demonized. It's not always already a forceful assertion of presence. Voice for Lonzi, at least, in the choices in the formal choices that she makes in self-portrait, voice is important. It's recorded voice that she writes. So voice remains within. If the text is logos, okay, the pre-written, the pre-manuscript that she carries, as she likes to carry, and through the technological choice, is a logos that contains in itself voice, possibility of voice. And voice is always, as you say, always not finished, not eloquent, not perfect, not polished. It has this. It is associated with something becoming. I find this a very productive venue of research. The extent to which in Lonzi's self-portrait, logos and phone, that is, phone is insidious vis-a-vis logos, and phone is a critical intervention, disrupts, interrupts, suspends uh, the power of writing to define, to rigidify, and therefore suspends the risk of falling into the traditional discourse of criticism as far as Lonzis is concerned. So, very productive venue. And then what you say about the autobiography, feminist autobiography, of course, I mean, especially I know from Rajni, from Professor Singh, who gave a wonderful talk on Dalit women. And Rajni, I remember a couple of years ago, and in Venice, it was online, but she emphasized the collective dimension. And final point, of course, Lonzi turns her back from the, or rather to the figure of the isolated artist and the figure of the isolated critic, although of course not to solitude. Isolation is one thing, solitude is something else. The artist, as the critic, need at a certain point solitude. They need to be monads, but in relation always. A landscape of monads in relation, because to create you need the solitude. But there is a sense that Lonzi wants solitude in relation. The solitude of the critic, however, in the essay Solitude, the critic refers to the absence of the real criticism that she's dreaming. Thank you so much, Paride. And needless to say, allow me to, if Priyanshu, Paride, those of you who are, who have made these theoretical comments, and should you in the future decide to pursue these things, I would be delighted to read anything that you write. I am simply delighted. I wish to move to Debatri's comment. Self always exists in relation to another. Yes, we totally connected to what Paridi was saying, and then I will cede the floor to Yashika. Through conversations with other artists, she's understanding herself as an artist. And I love the end, as an artist, and the paratactic, and because yes, Lonzi thinks that the complete critic is someone who can imagine herself in the position of the artist. And then, of course, you remember what Dibjotis asked at the end of his comment. This is in line. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm really, again, what I can say is that I'm struck by the way Ronzi is resonating with all of you. I'm really struck. Now, before moving to Priyanshu, I would like to cede the floor to Yashika. Yashika, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So I was thinking about the tape recorder and the use of tape recorder as a tool. So, like in the text I was reading, I just like even if we like look at the first page of the self-portrait, like Lonzi is like interrupted twice. She's not allowed to finish her sentences as well. And these the artists that she's interviewing, they are, except for, I think for Carla, they're all predominantly male artists. So it
Yes.
also like gives it records her the conversation accurately and authentically, how women were like not allowed the space to speak as well, in especially in criticism. So
Yes.
I just want, that was my comment,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
would like to elaborate.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yashika. This is an opportunity for me. Now, male artists. Yes, the lineup of artists, I'm glad you noticed that, in self-portrait is mainly male artists. Now, there is, however, Carla Accardi, and Lonzi will end up collaborating with Carla Accardi. Lonzi is thinking up this different criticism in a country that is deeply patriarchal. A patriarchal Italy where women had very little space. You have read the quote by Accardi and her fear, and what she would be told you when in relation to her experiments. You will Accardi, or you will be lost with your plastics. What are you doing? She was not, the idea of not being taken seriously. Lotz is aware of being a critic, a theorist in a patriarchal country. And the way she uses Hegel, the way she lashes out against Hegel, has to do with her frustration, the frustration at being the kind of situated thinker that she is. So it's completely important what you're saying. Now, among the male artists, however, there is one, Cy Twombly, the American artist, who is the only artist who does not reply to Lonzi's questions. Where when you read self-portrait, there's this flow of conversations, interruptions, suspensions, and when Lonzi asks, I think it's 2 or 3 times, when she asks a question, she asks Cy Twombly, well, he refuses to respond. Why? Because at that point, we mentioned interruption and suspension. I would add as two stylistic, formal tenets of Lonzi's critical discourse. I would mention another one, and it's performativity. What happens, Lonzi, if you notice, those of you will develop a taste for self-portrait and read it. When she asks the 2 or 3 questions to Cy Twombly, they are formulated in a very stodgy, traditional way. She's asking the artist about the meaning of his work, to elaborate on the meaning of his work. She's not listening. She's not practicing the criticism that she is seeking. So Lonzi, that's what I would argue, she is like almost theatrically, performatively acting as the traditional critic, and see, in order to elicit responses from the cluster of artists that she feels close to and with whom she interacts. The silence of Cy Twombly is equally performative. They are setting an almost a theatrical stage to show how intolerable, as she says, how intolerable, how sterile, and how limiting a traditional form of critical interaction with art is. So thank you for the opportunity to elaborate. The reason why your comment also illuminates the consequences of the crisis of criticism in Lonzi's career. It is no coincidence that Lonzi moved from art criticism to feminist theory, that form of critique that is feminist theory, because feminist theory, with its reliance on experience, with its reliance on experiment with different forms, responded somehow to her needs. Thank you so much. Now I need to take Priyanshu's comment in the chat, and then I know Priyanshu has his hand up, and then I will see the floor to Pranav. So tape recorder to bypass hierarchical structures and let their voices be heard. Okay, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, here again, we're back to the positive, affirmative uses of helpful uses of technology. Technology to supplement thought, to supplement a different critique that is interested in dismantling, undoing dynamics of power. This is very interesting. Now, before moving to Paridi, let me move to Priyanshu. Did you have anything to add on this before I cede the floor to Pranav? Because I see that you have your hand up. You can take the floor. Hello?
Yes, ma'am. This is Pranav.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I was
Ma'am,
asking.
I can say
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. I can say like after Pranav finishes. So like if you want to, he can speak.
Okay. So would you like to speak, or would you like Pranav to speak first, Priyanshu?
Ma'am, Pranav.
Okay, thank you. Pranav, you
Yes,
can, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Professor. I like to read. I want you to read this comment in light of the verse that I'm trying to suggest, or the thing that I'm trying to suggest. In jurisprudence, there is a foundational principle. I think a lot of people are not aware about jurisprudence or the legalities of the world and how the world is governed. But it is a very integral part of how the law works, of one of the founding principles of law, how the system works, and it's about personhood. What is personhood? When they describe personhood, they have a very clear understanding. It is that a person can only be provided
Pranav, I'm sorry. Can you come closer to the microphone? I want to be able to hear everything you say.
Okay, Professor, right now, are you able to listen to me?
Good, it's better, much better now, much better. Sorry about that. I want to be able to get everything.
It's okay, ma'am. In jurisprudence, there is a foundational principle about personhood. When a person is provided a personhood, whether a person is not provided a personhood. You can be a human, irrespective of the fact whether you have been provided a personhood or not. In America, 100 years ago, one white man is equivalent to 3 black men. So the personhood, like a personhood is about I'm a person, you are a person. But at that point of time, one person is equal to 3 person. So the idea of this personhood, it has an underlying assumption. The assumption is that a person can only be provided rights, its protections, and all the things that is enshrined under the law if the state recognize the subject, a person under the law. Now I want to draw a parallel that just as the subject, just as the law creates a subject, so does the speech creates existence. In a way, just think like that. The speech does not provide you something of like a chance, it's provide you existence. If you I'm trying to remember the Sartre's works, his radical existentialism. If you are aware about that, Professor, I think you're really aware. You are aware about that. Can you please like look at my comment? You will get the better idea, because I'm not able to properly frame this idea. That speech is not just a word thing; it is something which provides us existence. And ma'am, historically, people are enslaved. They are not provided the ability to speak up. Because they are not provided the ability to speak up, they were never part of the existence. In a way, I think I'm cluttering this entirety of the things. I'm trying to mix 2-3 different things, and I'm trying to go with the social contract, with the existential philosophy, and then drawing a parallel between all the 3 people that we have right now speaking about. Can you please look at the comment? You might be able to get it much better.
Can I respond, Pranav? Can I respond? So first of all, personhood. Tell me if I'm getting you back. personhood, personhood as a legal category. This is a very hot topic right now among certain thinkers, among others, Roberto Esposito that I mentioned. So, personhood person is a legal category. And it allows the law, it makes us recognizable through law and by law, by the state. So it's about having an identity that can be recognized by the law, through the law. It's about what I would say, it's about the juridification of people. Everyone is equal, equality. The legal notion of personhood is premised on an equality that, equality is, it's a very controversial equality because it's about juridifying everybody. Everybody is recognizable, but everybody is the same. Now, there are limits to, of course, legal personhood or personhood as a legal category. And you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying something important and something that is theoretically attuned with everything that we said. Speech, okay, creates a distance, departs from. It is something that allows to gain a distance from legal person. This legal personhood being a reduction of the singularity of the person, human. It creates a distance, but more importantly, speaking is existing. Okay, speech is when you invoke existential philosophy, we exist in and through language. Now, if I got you
Correct,
right,
ma'am. Right.
I think this is important. It's absolutely crucial because this is what critique, the task of critique, not only for the thinkers we are seeing, but for the future. I want to add something about the relevance of the debate on personhood. You know that in many places of the world, New Zealand, for example, or Spain, there is a struggle to endow things or natural entities with personhood. Okay, I think these phenomena call our attention to an attempt to exceed traditional definitions of personhood. And certainly it's a direction to go if you're interested in exploring the constraints and the limits of personhood in the sense that we assume personhood. Personhood is a category that allows us to be recognized by the state. Yes, it allows us to be governed. Speech is it's not an instrument, it's not a tool. That's why I keep calling it a space, because it establishes, it's a chance, it's an opportunity to establish a distance. I think you pronounced the word distance. Speech created distance, and speech as the environment where we exist. Now, Arendt deconstruction would I think would endorse what you're saying. What I want to stress that is really important in your comment is the notion of personhood, becoming aware of how we use that category, in democracies where, in fact, there is no democracy, because the minute you juridify people, it's like, I'm sorry if I mentioned this, I recently wrote a book about Antigone, the figure of Antigone, which is really about the political. And Antigone is a woman who struggles and rebels against Creon. And her argument is that Creon's idea of the political is wrong, because Creon, although he seems an enlightened man, wants to turn everybody into the same, and so this phenomenon I call the juridification of people. And she's looking for, she appeals, but she cannot defend her argument. She appeals to laws that are unwritten, unwritten laws to counter this reduction of the polis that becomes a logos that can recognize only insofar as it imposes its models. What for Antigone, language is absolutely what you say. The potential for existence, the potential to leap out of silence of the mute spell of mere happening, etc., etc.
Yeah, ma'am, you perfectly got the point that I was making. But there was a certain other aspect that I was also trying to make. Can you just please, for a brief moment, look at the comments? Like,
oh, sorry. Your
ma'am,
comment.
yeah, ma'am.
You,
This is the same thing. 3 years back, like I was in a
Pran,
place, and we are.
yeah. Oh, I see. Sorry, I see it now. Okay, in my view, right? Lord's realization. Okay, all right. I'm going to read the comment. In my view, Lord's realization, my silence had not protected me. Yes, my silences had not protected me. Mirrors of Sartre's existential imperative to remain silent is to surrender to non-being. Yes, so Lord as an existentialist thinker yes, but to speak is to carve oneself into absolutely. I mean, this is not not only what Lord is trying to say in the transformation of silence into speech and action, but it's also what Lons is trying to say. But importantly, it's what Arendt is trying to say. Although Arendt, of course, says it in a more theoretical way. She's a philosopher and she's interested in building a philosophical architecture, but that's exactly the point. She mirrors Sartre's defiant existential stance. To be silent is to accept the pre-written script imposed by the world. The pre-written, we're back to the archive. Yes, there is a pre-written script, and a pre-written script that covers over the about to be written, the script to come. I would like to use Agamben's formulation, the unthought, the unpresupposed community, but by the world. But to speak is to forge one's own meaning in defiance of non-being. Yes, yes. I mean, the fact that speech equals existence, and this is embraced by feminist thinkers of a variety from a variety of orientations. The fact that speech is existence is a position that comes from, I think, existential philosophy. The consequence is this, that feminist thinkers like Lonzi or like Lord must operate with a notion of the subject, that is, with a notion of being. They cannot operate to debunk the notion of being. I'm not prepared to carry this on. I will stop here. But what I'm trying to say, what I would like to say after reading more and reflecting more, is that Lord and Lonzi offer an alternative to the nihilistic drift of deconstruction. That's what I'm trying to say. Because they operate with being. And they don't say this is a dirty concept inherited from white philosophy, and so we don't want it, right? So Sartre's claim that existence precedes essence, yes. Feminist philosophers and thinkers add that existence is embodied, situated, and also post-colonial thinkers would, add to that. Precedes essence, that one is not born with meaning but must create it, mirrors the legal doctrine of personhood. Now, Sartre claimed that existence precedes essence, that one is not born with meaning but must create, mirrors the legal. Why? Under classic jurisprudence, individuals are not automatically granted full legal agency. They must be recognized as subjects of the law. Yes, but Lonzi wants to escape this when inserting her subjective, and feminism is trying to escape this kind of juridification. Uh, uh, that is taking away the power to certify. When Lonzi says it's about a new truth that cannot be certified by an authority, she is trying to escape exactly what I think you're calling the existential deriva drift, the existential drift. Um, but I wanted to say something about the idea of the doctrine of personhood. There is no doubt that the legal doctrine of personhood is limiting because it does not do justice to singularity. But if that is so, then language is something in excess of that, because language precisely, I mean, offers the promise. I'm not saying it does, offers the promise of um, somehow having a space in reserve, the archive we were talking about, that might at least do some justice to singularity. These are very complex and beautiful issues that we need to engage with. So I don't know if um, I want to understand if I got you, and then I'll continue. Historically, enslaved people, women, and colonized subjects were denied legal subjectivity, especially if we take the example of chattel slavery, right? I'm teaching Walden this semester, and we are reading Walden not as an ecological manifesto, but as a text about property. Thoreau is arguing against property, and he's arguing in America that where property was everything, chattel slavery, absolutely. Their existence was acknowledged by, but not recognized, much like this silenced individual in Lord's framework. Yes, and Lord cannot write while forgetting history and while forgetting the transgenerational echoes of history. Yes, Lord's insistence that silence does not protect parallels the legal struggle for enfranchisement. Just as a person without legal recognition is vulnerable, so too is a person. It's like European immigrants, if I may, sans papier, without documents. That whose lives have zero value according to legal person, because they have no documents and therefore they cannot be recognized. They don't exist. So whether they live or die, they do not they are not worth anything. Just as person without legal recognition is vulnerable, so too is a person who does not assert their existence through speech. Yes, I would say that your last comment, especially your last comment, encapsulates the idea of language that we've been cultivating in the lectures. Yeah, can I speak before you read? I'm sorry I had not read this before I ceded the floor to you. Pranav, tell me if we can move on, if this exchange is okay with you, if we can move on.
Professor, Amnit, can I speak?
Yes.
Professor, in a way, you perfectly got my point. In essence, you got my point, actually. But ma'am, it's 2 or 3 years back. I was looking at environmental economics and how economics are, like, they don't have a measure to quantify environmental resources. So they always come something as a perceived value. So they don't know about the values, intrinsic values of the environment, of the plant, or the tree. They always try to define sub-superficial values and try to make decisions based upon those values. I think we all are human beings are a rational animal in a way, and money, or like the currency, came in our thought whenever at a point or at a moment. We always think of optimizing the value of our resources. This underlying phenomena. Yeah, a lot of people can disagree with that, but we all act in that particular way of optimization. But we are not sure about what the values are. These are all the values we see. These all are drive values. These are not intrinsic values. So the way we live, inevitably we have to consider it, that the way we live, it is superficial in nature, it is synthetic in nature. And I was with a professor, her name is Tanuja Mumudi. She's an anthropologist and she works in Pondicherry University in India. She has done her work on tribal communities and how the usage of currency currency in a modern form changes the livelihood and the practice and the entirety of the way they think about the world. The use of currency has a really the extent of changes or the extent of practices that the people perceive in a society which is not using, or a community which is not using a currency, and suddenly one day they are using currency. The way their cultural practices, their existence, their thought process, the way they live, the way they eat, all things just change, all things just vanish in a moment, just with the introduction of currency. So I just came to realize this, the maybe the just try to look at that thing. I was talking about the personhood, the legalities, and another way, one other important thing of the modern world, currency, the optimization. It is also synthetic in nature. Or maybe we might be able to always argue about intrinsic values and debates and ideas and thought, because all these things are not like something superficial. Ideas or thought in themselves are something which are intrinsic in nature. Your ideas are your ideas, my ideas to an extent. But your currency is my currency, or your value or your resources, my resources. You cannot argue about that, I'm sure. So maybe there is an underlying issues that we have to look forward to. Maybe we are always able to debate about these things in a thought process, in philosophical or in a critical debate. But on the world place, on legal issues, there is another opinion. On economics, on which I think the entire of the world is running right now on that particular thing, optimization of resources, optimization of utility.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have anything which is intrinsic. All things are derived from something superficial. So I just want to know your opinion about this, like about this
Yes,
thought process.
uh, Pranav, could you put the name of the scholar in the chat and the name of the book? What I'm hearing is that you turn to economics in order to encourage, advocate a reconsideration of value. I mean, you're mentioning of the function of currency. Of course, the communal dynamics change, or the value of the individual changes in societies that don't use currency. But the problem, it seems to me, you are pinpointing is value, the notion of value, right? And understanding what we mean by that. Now, what I can say is that the value of when it comes to life, okay, when it comes to life, our way of looking at life is totally monetarized, monetarized, monetarized. That is, there are certain people who are worth something, certain people are worth nothing. Why? So that is the
Totally agree.
urgency. That's where the urgency comes to redraw value. But what you're saying is fundamental, because you're pinpointing to a kind of schizophrenic separation in the disciplines, but just as there is a schizophrenic separation between history and critical thought. Think about the US at the moment, right? So much progress in critical thought, and look at the public sphere, totally authoritarian. So there is this strange divide. I think that when we talk about interdisciplinarity, we should really become aware of what we're talking about, and we should make sure that the radical changes are made in order to practice it, because the need for the interdisciplinary arose precisely from some of the problems you're pointing at. Because we are at the moment when we, in different parts of the world, we have the same desire for a vaster world, first of all, a more respectful world, and a gentler world. And that's not in the humanities. I mean, we need to enlist all the tools jurisprudence, anthropology, economics. Uh, so I hear you.
Yes.
So like I hear you. I hear you. Thank you.
Yeah. It's okay, ma'am. So kind of you.
Is it Paridi's turn or Priyanshu's? Paridi, would you like to say something?
Ma'am, Priyanshu has been waiting for a while, so.
Oh, sorry, Priyanshu. I'm sorry, Priyanshu. Yes, of course. And then
Hello, ma'am.
Paridi.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are, Priyanshu.
Okay, just so, ma'am, again, I am back with like I try to relate few of the concepts like the Plato's theory of mimesis and the idea of the space of appearances. And like try to relate with this the African literature as well as the female Dalit literature. So, like, ma'am, as the Plato suggests that art is twice removed from reality. So, like, uh, it tells us that art is very passive imitation, but when I try to like examine it through the lens of the space of appearance and female Dalit literature and from the lens of African literature, so it became very clear that representation is just not imagination or not just imitation, but an active force that shapes the reality. So, to me, these literary traditions basically they argue that literature is not being about being removed from reality, but it is also it's to me or to everyone. It may be about like bringing the erased realities into the public view and reclaiming the voices, and also about resisting the historical distortions. So
Yeah.
like when so ma'am, when the Plato made this thing like the that art is very deceptive and very inferior to philosophy, and even like potentially it is very dangerous because like it could manipulate emotions and rather than revealing truth. So like when I try to relate with this concept of Hannah's the space of appearance, so like this concepts tell me that like reality is not fixed, but it is created through public speech, action, and interaction.
Yeah.
So we have this example of marginalized groups. So like when we talk about women, when we talk about oppressed communities, when we talk about colonized people, so they have historically been excluded from this space, and
Yeah.
and literature, unlike Plato's view, that does not remove us from the reality, but it creates new realities by allowing the silenced voices to emerge. So when I read this work of like Toni Morrison's Beloved, so like it tells us the idea that history as a truth, and and in a very beautiful way Morrison like by blending realism and supernatural elements,
Yeah.
she demonstrated that like how memory, trauma, and literature shapes the historical reality, then only reflecting it. And if we can also take the example of Chiuna Achebe's Things Fall Apart, like it also shows us that like how European literature misrepresented Africa, and how African storytelling is counter narrative that restores history. So when we look back and when we find, so to me, this classical view is like basically, or like it is majorly challenged by the marginalized literary
Yeah.
traditions,
Yeah.
where literature is not just an imitation, but it is an act of political resistance. It is an act of identity formation, and it also play a major role in correcting the history.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
what I observed and what I found, like the space of like what space of appearances challenges Plato by arguing that public discourse is where the reality is actively constructed, and marginalized literary traditions like the Dalit literature. And when we talk about African literatures, suppose like African, as what I observe, what I can say, like Plato says like art is twice removed from the reality, and after reading this whole thing, I can say that Africans. African women are twice removed from the reality. First of all, they are black. Second, this is a racial comment, and second, they are women, so they are removed from reality. Similarly, when we talk about Dalits, so Dalit are also the marginalized people, and they are removed from the reality twice. So in this way we are excluding them from the mainstream literature, and uh, I find that the marginalized literary traditions, like so that literature is not like they have like pulled it, and they have like demonstrated it in a very better way, that literature is not just imitation, but it is a way of reclaiming lost histories, and like
Yeah.
operation
Yeah.
of like creating new societal
Yeah.
realities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here I found Plato's view very contradictory.
Yes. Thank you so much, Priyanshu. Now, critique. Your comment relates to the critique that we've been presenting in the lectures.
Yes,
Critique
ma'am.
is anti-mimetic. Anti-mimetic because its driving force is a view of literature that is anti-mimetic. What does it mean? Exactly that the critique we've been looking at believes that literature is an active force that shapes
Yes,
reality, that shapes the world. It's a critique that is not afraid of the poet. You know, Plato was suspicious of the poet, of the artist. It's a critique that relies heavily, as we saw with Lonzi, on art and the artist as a vehicle for truth. So, yes, the critique we are presenting here, the kind of critical discourse we are presenting, is anti-mimetic because it latches on to a literature, an art that is not, in your words, to quote you, not an imitation of what already is reality, but on a literature that is an active force, sees itself as an active force that shapes reality, the possibility. Now, this
yes, ma'am.
idea that reality can be changed, however, is a relatively modern idea. It comes with Marx after Marx, that reality is something that can be shaped, put into shape, that
Yes, ma'am.
can be changed. And the critique we are looking at is a profoundly modern discourse. Now, moreover, space of appearance. In light of what you said, yes, the space of appearance agrees, is attuned to an idea of reality as a very dynamic configuration in which there is space for different groups,
Yes,
in which everybody
ma'am.
can appear, the space of appearance. But yes, the anti-mimetic thrust of criticism can be observed not only in feminist criticism, but in the other critical schools we named. Deconstruction is profoundly anti-mimetic. In
Yes,
fact, when I was doing research, just very, very brief anecdote, when I was doing research on in the Sontag archive at UCLA, I discovered their correspondence with Derrida, and she sent Derrida the first draft of Against Interpretation, and Derrida responded, "Your Against Interpretation is my of grammatology, anti-mimetic." They were united as and they are representatives of a certain stretch of intellectual history in the West after World War II. They were united in this anti-mimetic mission to lend literature and art, to inject them, literature, art, and thought, with a shaping force. Moreover, Adorno, we mentioned Adorno. Remember, Adorno, inspirer of critique, he said that thinking is not bowing to things as they are, not bowing to things as they are, anti-mimetic as well.
yes,
But
So, ma'am, like, can we put it into a discourse of a study, like how there is a major shift from the time of Plato, like how the ideas, how the criticism even itself was very limited. So, like when we talk about method or like touchstone method, like we are referring to the original text, and then we are then we are criticizing the text which is written right now. So, like, can be the discourse of study, like how there is a major shift from Plato's time to this, like right now we have a space of appearance, and like we have this Kalra's view.
Could you rephrase the question for me, Priyanshu? I want to make sure that I understand your question.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, I'm saying that like can be a discourse of study, like how there is a shift, how there is a major shift from the Plato's time and the ideologies
Yeah.
to yeah,
Got it.
yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Yes. In fact, theory, the theoretical criticism that we are all attracted, for better or for worse, in our time, represents that major shift from classical times on. Yes. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. That was it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Faridi,
ma'am.
your turn.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Ma'am, this is not a comment but more of a question. Since we are bringing the Italian critics, especially we were talking about Lonzi today, in the existing Anglophone tradition, I would like you to please mention the name of the Italian critic you referred, especially in the first class when you're talking about reshaping the critical tradition with thinking institutions as more of an ally
Yes,
instead of the
yes,
yeah.
Faridi. Yes, I'm going to put his name in the chat. It's Roberto Esposito, the
Yes, ma'am, that
institutional
would be
term.
very helpful.
Yeah.
Another question I have is the idea of how the idea of emerging out of the cave, the Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about.
Mm-hmm.
How is the when we talk about the opposite of it, that chaos is descending into the cave instead of emerging out of it? I was thinking more on the lines that if we emerge out of the cave, we would be in a chaotic world where everything is interconnected. But why is chaos descending into the cave is something I was wondering about for quite a while now, and I would like to know your views upon it.
Now, descending, the movement of the fact that reaching truth, the pursuit of intellectual pursuit, getting to an idea, in the sense that we were saying earlier on with Pranav, getting to an idea because there is a need to search for a different thought and a more inclusive and expansive thought. For Sontag and for Rich, and for feminist thinkers like Rich, can be imagined only as a going down. Why? Because while going up is an ascension, an ascent, it's like levitating, and it can have a metaphysical, connotation. Going down means re-reflecting, to quote Pranav. It's re-exploring, reconsidering, revising the past in order to identify, to liberate, to unfreeze what has been suppressed. So the descent is intimately tied to this different idea of criticism that should be more inclusive, that is less focused on the singularity of texts, on the single text, and more not a tool but more a force, literature as a force to imagine and to change society, imagine a different society and to change society. But especially, I haven't said it well, the descent projects the need to recover the archive of suppressed thoughts, the unthought. That's why inverting Plato for Sontag is so important, because she's searching for a different kind of thought, and her critical discourse comes from that search. I have to say something, Paridi, that only recently I became interested. I started to pay attention to the movement of dissent in women's thinking. Only recently. I started, I think it was last year when I was asked to deliver a lecture in Padova, a university nearby, and I started to analyze the notion of text, and I bumped into the attunement of course, I discovered the attunement of H.D. and Rich that then I presented in one of the lectures. So only recently I became drawn to studying, or thinking about the life of the mind in anti-Platonic terms, not as an ascent toward truth and illumination, but illumination as a dive into the chaos, as Audre Lorde would say, it's a descent into chaos. Because what prompts that descent is what Sedgwick calls the need to rearrange, reshape the object of interest, the cultural object, so that it provides healing, provides it provides a reparative, a reparation of hostile forces in society. Tell me if this is helpful to you, Paride, a little
Yes,
bit.
ma'am, it is very helpful. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Pranav, I'm waiting for the name of the scholar you mentioned, and the book. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm copying on this. All right. I see that Rashmi reminds us that we should close the session. I mean, this has been a very exciting exchange. Thank you for the nourishment, I should say. I know we haven't covered Audre Lorde as extensively as we've covered Lonzi, but I hope there will be other opportunities. Priyanshu, thank you. And Pranav, you had your hand up. Did you want to add anything? Thank you.
Professor, one thing, that's Professor Tanuja Mamudi. She didn't she does not have any book regarding things.
Oh.
She has done a multiple research paper. So this entirety of the works are research papers only.
Okay, thank you so much for that specification. Very valuable to me. I would like to thank all of you for your active participation for this incredible tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the last day and the 2 lectures. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you again. So Rashmi, we can close the session. I leave it up to you. Thank you, Rashmi, for your collaboration. Rashmi, can you hear us? She might be busy.
Ma'am, can you hear Professor Rajni? She's been talking.
Okay. I think we are ready. You're ready. Thank you for all your manifestations of gratitude. I'm grateful to you. I'll see you tomorrow. Rashmi, we can close the session if you like.
Sure, ma'am, we can. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.